It's been a bit of a heads down week this week on Lincoln Green, and I don't video everything because otherwise I end up with like 29 fucking episodes on a complete car rebuild. Oh, right, okay. So let me show you what I've been doing this last week. Right, been having not a lot of fun with the tailgate. So, those of you familiar with the Range Rover will know that there's a box that sits in the middle of the top tailgate. It's got these two rods that come off the edges, and the idea is when you push the plunger, you operate that and it pulls the two rods in, which activates the catches on the ends. This is the unit that came off the customer's car. The first problem I had was that the casing had warped along here. So I put a couple of blobs of weld on there and painted it, put it all back on again. It shuts really, really nicely, but it's a bastard to open. And the reason it's a bastard to open is there's just a world of play in it. It's absolutely all over the place. Look at the amount of... Now, if I compare that to one that I robbed, one of my units that I robbed, it just feels so much more fluid. Hours wasted trying to get this fucking tailgate sorted out. Now, when you take these off, there's two flathead screws that go through the underside of the main rail, and you never get them undone. And the reason you never get them undone is they've rotted to the inside of the rail. So drill the heads off, get yourself a nice pipe wrench or whatever, mole wrench, and just twist the remains of the thread out, and they come out. So I am just in the process, I think, of popping this back on again. And seeing if this bloody works, because it wants to, it really does. Because like I say, the problem is that I could close the tailgate very easily, but opening it required me to push down on the different corners in order for it to release the catches, and that was because I just couldn't get enough kind of twist, enough pull on the catches because of the amount of play. Right, I'm just going to clean this thread up a little bit. It's got some paint on it. In fact, I might wind the tap through that. It's going to be easier. It's just a case of tidying these things up before they go on, because it's otherwise it just becomes a nuisance. Right, there we go. That's probably a 3/16 thread, I would have thought. Let's take the nut out. It's going to be the same thread as that. And it is. Right, thread gauge, 3/16, straight in, 3/16. Right, so bonnet first. I very, very, very thin skim of filler over this corner, which I then flatted, primed, filler primer, flatted, and then just dusted in some top coat there just to make it look the same. Okay, primer is porous. So I'm really pleased with that, the way that's come out. If you think about where that came from to where it is now, yeah, I am pleased. If I'm pleased, that's the standard we should set ourselves by. I've also fitted the front number plate. Wipers needed done. On the inside, doesn't that open nicely? Yeah, we got all the dash together. Carpet is in the centre console here. I still need to get the carpets for the footwells and so forth. Yeah, dash is complete. Put a little telltale for the fog light up here. So the fog light still operates off the main fog light control. Little telltale up there. The radio, pair of speakers underneath there, and a pair of boat speakers underneath the seats. I'll show you what they look like in a second. And I also put the carpets over the rear wheel arches down there as well. So we've still got quite a bit of work still in the interior, but at least it's heading there in the right direction. I think the next key step for this car is to get it MOT, which is why the rear view mirror has been installed, because we're going to need that. So I'm just going through the list of bits and bobs that we need to get done. So I need to secure the bottom edge of that wing, put a pair of back wheels on it, and I think that is more or less what I need for an MOT. I'm fairly convinced that everything now is working. Let me just get this tailgate open. Because of the new rubbers, the aluminium construction on the tailgate, this thing is a bastard to open. Right, how can we do this? You could stand on there, I think. Can you stand? You could stand there, right there. I think you can see. So basically, you have to put a hand on one corner, push the button, and it opens. Every single bloody time. And it closes and opens. And the reason for that is the rubber seal just hasn't compressed down enough. You can see it's compressing. It is working its way down, but when we get down to this point here, I can't do much more about it. So when it comes to, right, speakers, when it comes to the centre console, you want small speakers. Now these little Alpine jobbies here, they are 9 centimetres, sorry, 9 centimetres. But they're reasonable power, look. Reasonable power. So I wire those two in as the front speakers underneath the centre console. These are the marine speakers that John bought. So the only reason we went for this style of speaker is because we can bolt it to the floor. So they're in as well. And these come with all manner of made in China. I think basically anything that's not made in China probably would say not made in China rather than, I mean, everything. I know that Chinese export. Tested to comply with Chinese export standards. How about that? They're bad, aren't they? Really bad. Anyway, they're quite nice actually. They're not the best speakers in the world, but I tell you what, they're not the worst. So that's okay. So that's the speakers. Head unit is one of these. It wasn't that expensive from what John has said. Yeah, it's all right actually. There is an external microphone that goes with it as well, which I've not connected up, but that's easy enough to sort out if John actually wants to go hands-free on this thing. But yeah, it's quite a neat little unit. Right, Right, the other thing I've done is I've been schutzing. I'll take the glue out. That's for my carpet fetish. Good stuff, this. Right, so we'll come back to those in a second. I'll show you what I've been doing with those. So on the, John, you're not having this bonnet. On the underbody, John picked up a ton of this stuff here. I've never seen it before. However, goes on with the Schutz gum, goes on like porridge. So I have been over the entire underbody of the car, oh, God help us, and the chassis, and sprayed it. It's a messy bastard job, I can tell you now. Really, really, really messy. But it's quite a thick, waxy surface that has gone dry. So it's not wet still, but it's still soft. So I think it's going to be ideal for this. You can see here is areas here where it went on a bit thick and it's run a little bit, but it'll do the job. That's the main reason the back wheels have been off. So I've done the entire underbody of the car, and then you can see the telltale puddles down here where I've put the Dynax S50. It's gone up inside the B pillar, the A pillar, and also inside the tailgate. So what I do with the tailgate, the easiest way to do the tailgate, if we open the tailgate, oh God's sake, Richard, I'll just put my hand in there, look. The easiest way to do the tailgate is actually just drill yourself a small hole on the end here. It's discreet, it's hidden, and then put your probe deep inside. And the probe will stretch right the way through to here, and basically just spray the whole of the inside of this lower section. But also then the upper section up here. In fact, I've missed a bit there, look at that. Right. Yes, car's coming together really fast. Now, these top corners, all I've done with these is stripped off the old vinyl, and you can see these are early ones because they don't have the little skirt at the bottom there which sticks out. So they need to be retrimmed and then they can go back on. John's trying to find someone to paint it because he's going to go down the paint route, which I think it deserves actually. As much as I kind of favour a patina, it needs to be honest patina. And I think when you end up with a white bonnet and a brown door, it's not honest patina, but the rest of it is honest patina. So you kind of have to fake the bonnet and this door in order to get the overall effect of a car with a good level of patina. And no, Elias, it's not a lazy restoration. I saw your comment, and so did John. It's not a lazy restoration. It's called customer, what the customer wants from their car. However, I think he's decided now that he is going to get it painted. So yes, I think is the answer there. Right now, I've been having some struggles with the brakes on the Lincoln Green car, which is why it's still here. And I've replaced the master cylinder because effectively what was happening was I was getting about half the travel on the pedal before the front brakes were engaging, and then by the time I started the engine and the servo was doing its thing, the pedal was on the floor. I've adjusted the push rod and everything, and it was starting to baffle me. So I changed the master cylinder, exactly the same fault. So now I think really what I'm going to do is remove the servo and let's see what's going on. And the reason for that is that with the help of a colleague yesterday, not a colleague, with the help of a visitor yesterday, who was able to just touch the brake pedal while I unbolted the master cylinder away from the servo, I could detect that there was a fair amount of movement within the mechanism of either the pedal or the servo itself. And I suspect that this is being amplified because of the lever of the brake pedal. So let me get it off. It's only, 6 bolts to get it out. You need to remove the dash under panel. Let me go over there. You need to remove the dash under panel, and then up in the footwell there's 4 bolts. You don't need to drain the brake fluid down. Undo the 2 nuts here, move the master cylinder away from the servo, and you can remove the servo and the brake pedal. And there we go. So servo's out, pedal's out, and this is what they look like when they're out of the car. So these early style pedal boxes, the pedal is separate to the main bulkhead box, and it's all kind of serviceable. So there's clips up here which I'll go into in a second. That's the push rod which sits in the nose of the servo. Brake master bolts onto here, and that's where you adjust it. I'll go into that in a second. But first and foremost, we need to find out where all this play is coming from in the servo. So let me arrange you somewhere over here. Click, 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 clank, 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 clank. Right, so the problem I've got here is that when I look inside the top end of the servo where the master goes, I can actually push the pedal end in quite a way before it does anything. So I know that the servo is working because when I put my foot on the brake pedal and start the car up, the pedal sinks even further, which is a good indication of the whole thing behaving itself. So let's do pedal first, because that's the easy bit. Now, brake pedal. 2 circlets on the end of the pedal. That was not even in properly by the looks of things. Let me just get my circlet pliers so you can come in a bit closer. Perhaps people are moaning they're not actually seeing what the frick is going on. Work 2. Remove 1 circlip. Remove 2nd circlip. Whoops. Ham-fisted gibbon. There we are, 2nd circlip. And then really should be able to push the pin out. Now the pin has got the pin that goes through the pedal. It's actually got a D section cut out on one end and it's round the other, so it can only come out in one direction. And no, I don't understand any pun about one direction. Right, using a pencil there just to push it out, as the pin's looking very dry. Probably not going to help it, is it? Once the pin comes out, it's all out, there we are, the pedal gets moved. Right, in the pedal we've got these 2 bushes, which actually look to be in reasonable order. If I put the pin in there, there's a fair amount of movement in there, which is not going to help. As far as the spring is concerned, that literally goes on like that. And then when you line everything up, in fact, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the fragile brake light switch out before it gets broken. I can go there. And when you're putting the pedal in and out of the box, literally it's just a case of lining things up. and you can see how you might be able to drop the pin straight back in again fairly easily. So I made a bit of a mess of that, but it's actually not as difficult as it looks to get this thing apart. Now, while this is all apart, probably going to treat this to a lick of paint and a de-rust, and the pedal also, but look to find out whether these bushes are available or whether it's the pin that's at fault. That's just wear, isn't it? Okay, look, parts manual, all the pedal bushes, find the part number, find out if they're still available. Otherwise, it's going to be making the best of what I've got in my used old stock. So 2E. Right, let's go up towards pedal box. Pedal box, pedal box, pedal box. Pedal box, here we are. Oh yeah, CRC 2797. Phone is here. Oh. CRC 2797. Oh, for fuck's sake. This is great footage, Richard. Oh. Right, it looks like the part number's been superseded by CAC, C-A-C, CAC, 7815. But it doesn't look the same in any way. Brake bush and clutch pedal. And obsolete. Obsolete face. That's what it should look like, you see. If this is not available, then I think we might have a bit of a problem here. Use CAC 7815. So CAC 7815. No longer available. LR Direct. Doesn't mean it can't be made up. Yeah, it looks like it's that. So the bushes and the pedal are no longer available, which might be a problem, might not be a problem. I've got other pedals, and it's interesting to note that the bushes and the clutch pedal are the same. So it could be that I can utilise either the pin or the bush from one of my existing pedal boxes, and I've got some left-hand drive pedal boxes which are of little use to me, so it might be that I can extract the bushes from those if they're any better. Right, okay, so let's move that over there. That can go over there, that can go over there. Don't lose this, by the way. This is the bolt, the cranked bolt, that allows you to adjust the height of the pedal, so it goes in line with the throttle. You see it's got a big crank on the end there. It's got these two plastic bush things which you can get new. Fiendishly flipping expensive, but you can get them. Right, so this lot can come off here, and we're going to take this servo apart and see what's going on. You can also get the push rod and all the seals. That can go over there, and that can go over there. Right, servo. So these things coming apart, they're actually not that difficult. Had them apart before. What I really want is a 7/16 spanner. And all we're doing here is releasing the big band that secures the two halves together. Can we actually see what's going on here? We're working up here, Richard. Probably can't really see what's going on. Let's move you up a little bit. Remove the big band, just holds the two halves together. And a band will have some tension to it, but the whole thing is not going to explode open, so don't worry about that. There's the bolts, nice little pinch bolts, and then the band can slip off. It's got some rust in there, I need to paint that. And then what we need to do is lift off the end cap of the servo. This is the back end cap, the bit that goes up against the bulkhead. This should just slide off. He says, be careful not to damage the rubber diaphragm that's inside. It comes off. There we are. Dead easy, eh? Then what we need to do is pull the entire servo unit away from its housing. Now this, again, should come out. If you lift the rubber up all the way around the outside, you can see that there's a lip in here. Now I should be able to get a small screwdriver underneath that lip. There we are, it's lifting up, that's nice. So we're lifting effectively a bucket out of a bucket. A nice snug fitting bucket comes out of a nice snug fitting container. It's going to come, it will come. There we are. Right, now what we've got is the inner workings of the servo and the outer casing of the servo. Okay, the outer casing can be sent off, grip blasting, whatever you want to do with it. Inner workings, really, in order to do any work on this, you need to separate the nut, the giant nut on the base. And I can see someone's been in here before because this lock washer looks like it's been worked with. So peel the lock washer back. Now we're going to need a big spanner, not me. What's that? Nope, bigger than that. Pliers. This centre section, by the way, is plastic, so just be careful. Now we use, that should go on there, and it shouldn't be particularly tight, and it isn't. Look at that. So we undo. Now as we undo, there's a hulking great spring in here, which I'll show you in a second. Just make sure that this whole thing doesn't just fly all over the place when you loosen that clip off. There we go. Now, looks fairly violent, but this spring is very, very, very soft. You could squash it down almost flat. Okay? Don't lose that. Again, all we've really got here is a giant rubber for now, which sits over the outside of that casing. That rubber looks to be in good order. I'll double check it over in a second. That can be stored over there. What we've then got is the top rubber, which is held in place by these nuts and these screws, and the centre cartridge. Right, last of the screws. Right, now this should push through, just a bit of palm pressure on there. There it goes. This whole thing comes out like that, see? And there we've got an original Lockheed diaphragm, which sits on that metal cup there. Okay? Again, keep that nice and safe. I'll double check that in a second. Now, when we are looking in here, this piece should just come off. There's a big O-ring that holds it in place. Okay? And underneath, we have got some rings. It's like a shim ring. Then we've got these two metal pieces. Another ring. And then we've got a circlip here. So this circlip comes off. And when it comes off, this whole push rod assembly comes off from the outside. The top cap here, that should just pop off there. This is the cap that holds what should be an air filter in there, but I can't see one. So obviously someone's been in here before. Right, this should then come out, and it does. So you got that. You got this. Now, this thing in its entirety is it's kind of non-serviceable, but there is a ball joint in here, and you can find out whether that's fucked or not by removing the circlip or C-clip, as is the case here, C-clip comes off. That then releases the tension against the top of the ball joint, and I can now feel the ball joint is actually in there. There's a bit of play in there. Hear it? It's not the end of the world, but if we're getting to the point where half our braking effort is lost because this thing is not behaving itself, then perhaps we need to consider a service. I'm just going to pop that C-clip back on. Now, there should be a foam rubber around here. That cup is designed to sit snugly inside this housing, and there's a lip down there, and then the seal goes on below that. But like I say, none of this is particularly serviceable. I would imagine what they did is they put the ball joint in there, and then it looks like they've peened it here, here and here to lock it in place. So it doesn't look like any part of this you could take apart any further, so don't bother. What we do have though is the main diaphragm. So let's have a look, just check wear, holes, lots of talcum powder of course. Looks pretty good actually. I'm not going to replace it unless I have to. I can go back on there again. Yeah, and this one is a tighter fit inside the housing. And again, it all seems pretty good. I'm not going to bother taking it off because I think it's all right. Could come off there though, couldn't it? Let's take it off there. Get a better look then at the inside of this. I mean, like I say, I had a good feeling that there was no issue with the servo, so I'm actually not going to worry too much about the rubber diaphragms. I think they're all in good order. You can buy service kits for these, which includes these two giant diaphragms and all of the various other bits and bobs, seals and filters and God knows what else. But if you don't need them, then there are more interesting ways to spend the 100 and whatever it is million pounds that they're going to cost. Now in here there is nothing but there's no ring around the outside. I'll just put some Vaseline around these before it all goes back together again, and that all looks fairly okay. Now interestingly, between this and this, it looks like this is designed to go in there, and I'm wondering if this is where the play is being introduced. So let's pop this back in, and then we want that circlip to go on the other end of it. So that needs to go up there like that. Circlip, giant one, is there. This should then hold the shuttle mechanism into, let's do it over here so you can see. So I push that down, and the circlip goes over the top. And that's in. So we're back to where we were now, and I can still put the filter in there because that goes just underneath that cap there. So that's in. Now, see, there's no, I'm not getting that clonk now, which is interesting, isn't it? So what have I done? What have I fixed? Big thing goes there. Now these little chaps here, these appear to be, they just sit underneath this plunger here. Whether they locate it or whether they stop it going too far, but there's definitely, you can see there's definitely a wear mark on one side. So you can see how it went in. I'm wondering if perhaps just turning them over and putting them back in, are they exactly the same both sides? Cack-handed gibbon. Well, they look to be completely flat, and you can see wear marks on there. Where they wear. Right, okay, we're going to pop that back in like that. So that one goes in there, and that one goes in there. There we go, and then we've got that big shim went over the outside of it all. Okay, so I'll put these two pieces back in upside down to try and eliminate some of that play. And now you can start to see how in here, as I push the servo, you can see it goes so far, and then it will start to push this, I believe. I don't know if this piece is part of the kit. So that piece then, these two chamfered edges here sit on top of those two metal rings there. Click. And now when I push, then it's going to push the entire thing. But all of that play has gone. So have we really done that just by turning these two upside down? Or if we move the ball around to a non-worn position in its orientation? Because obviously the ball joint inside this valve here. Now that goes in there, that goes in there. And that goes in there, click. There's all that play. Right, so let's turn those back the other way up. That'll be a cheap and easy fix, if that's what it was. So literally just putting these back in the opposite orientation to how they come out. And that. And then that. There's a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of play in there, but nowhere near what there was. Interesting. Right, okay. So next we need to pop this back on again. So this goes back in here, and this needs to line up with one of the screw holes, which are about there. Now so far, all of these parts that have gone in here appear to be in reasonably good order, apart from where that play was being introduced. So I'm wondering now if that was root cause. I'm going to have to give this diaphragm a damn good clean off before it all goes back together again, purely because I don't want grit inside the servo. Let's just brush this crap off here. Put the tray back down. That's better. Right, okay, let's do these up again. Now, because this top piece here is plastic, I don't want to deform it, but also nor do I want a vacuum to leak past this bolt, or this machine screw to give it its correct turn. Now let's put the spring back in. So one spring, boing, says Zebedee, and spring, and push this down. That's going down nicely, and then washer, lock washer, and nut. Oops. Lock washer and nut. You don't need to do these up in a vise, folks, just making sure it's not cross-threaded. I don't believe it is. Wrench. Do that up as much as it's going to go. I've been over the whole thing, and I've got it to the point where there's maybe half the end float there was. Really just by rotating that shaft and checking everything was clean and fully assembling it. I think I had already fixed the majority of the problem purely by flipping those two tabs the other way up. So really all I want to do now is to put this thing back in the car and see if my brake pedal feel has improved, which it wants to have done. It couldn't have been any worse, I'll be honest. So we'll just position that roughly. Now, when you're putting these things back together again, you really want to make sure that upright and square to the upright on the back here, because you've got these 4 studs and those 2 studs. This is an imperial servo, so basically you want to have the studs pointing upwards. If you had a metric one, they'd be pointing horizontally. Pardon me, hickety-uppities. So that's kind of where I want it. Now, what I'll do is I'll put the pinch bolt back through here. Then I'm going to go and have a play with, what have I done with the pinch bolt? Pinch bolt. The bench is nice and tidy, you can see that. There it is. Silly arse. Now, pinch bolt can go back through here. There we go. Should pull the 2 halves of the servo, the back half and the front half shell. It should pull them together by doing this, and then it will tighten the seal around that back rubber, which you can actually see poking in between the 2 there. Right, 7/16 spanner and wrench. So I think that's pretty much about there. That'll work, and that'll work. Right, we'll give it a go. We've got nothing to lose. Now, the other thing I have noticed on this is that the thread at some point has been crossed on this. Fuck knows how. And then someone's fixed it. And that. Right, let's pop it all back together again. And after it's all gone together, we got the pedal back. So all I really did with the push rod up here was follow the manual for the later metric system, which says I think it's 21mm from the face of the servo. As you can see, I've welded new bolts in on the inside of the servo, put all the cut washers and everything back in, set the push rod, beautiful, brakes. And this car is more or less ready now for a good shakedown.